There's a really famous passage in the myth of Sisyphus where he asks, why do we differentiate Monday to Friday if we're doing the same thing? And he has a poetic response where if we think of Sisyphus pushing this boulder up a mountain and we imagine in his head that he can think about whatever he wants, he is free in that sense.
Well, welcome back to the Pens and Poison podcast. I have a really special guest with us today. It is Sasha Zeiger. She is a writer and a lover of philosophy. So we're going to talk all about books and philosophy today. Sasha, thank you so much for joining me today. And I'd love to just start off and hear a little bit about some of your favorite books, some of your favorite philosophers. And yeah, I'm sure we'll have a really, really productive discussion from there.
I'm so excited. Thank you for having me. I wore my black turtleneck because everything existential, everything Gothic is what
amazing.
Very ready. Oh my God. When is the last time that you're able to just talk about like your favorite book, your favorite philosophy? I don't know, but I'm just so grateful to have this opportunity. Favorite book, it's obviously changed throughout the years, but the book that has the biggest impact on me is A Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. It's my obsession. I call it my Bible. The preface, I feel like, is everything. And if later we talk about our writing processes, I can tell you how it fits in. But it was my first introduction to the Gothic without knowing what the Gothic was, because I was 13 years old. And like, I never grew up watching scary movies, nothing dark, nothing sinister. So for me, I was just like, oh my God, it's a painting and the painting changes and it comes to life and it's so magical and wonderful. And then you go through like your teenage years in college and you reread it and you're like, wait a second. This is actually like super, super dark and super sad and incredible. And so I'm very much a lover of everything Gothic. Edgar Allan Poe is now, I have to say like he's my favorite author, even though Picture of Dorian Gray is my favorite book. But Edgar Allan Poe is everything to me. The way he writes, I mean, he must have been a really sad dude, really sad, dark dude. I don't know how to channel him, but I would definitely I would start there. Like Picture of Dorian Gray, Edgar Allan Poe. If you want to know me, that's my soul to some degree.
Yeah, and tell our listeners a little bit about the Gothic, right? I think it maybe means different things in different contexts. So in the context of literature, how do you personally define kind of Gothic literature?
And yeah, thank you for asking that question, because it's funny when I talk about it with my mom, like the book that I'm writing, I describe it as Gothic and she's like, why is it so dark? Like, you're such a good person, you're so light. Like, why do you like this dark stuff? And for me, and learning more about the Gothic, it's really a reaction and a response to everything that is romantic and over-idealized and pastel-y. And I think there's something about seeing life through rose-colored glasses that scares me. That is just like when everything is too happy and too sunshine, it feels sinister. Whereas when you're engaging with something raw and real, and a lot of it is like the memento mori, remember death, it might seem dark, but because it feels realer, there's some kind of comfort in that for me. So I don't get that usual discomfort when it comes to darker topics. When it's all like girl met boy and they fell in love and like meet cute, I'm like, oh my God, please no. Absolutely not. And even that.
So you're a realist.
I like to think so. I mean, I'm still like a romantic idealist at heart, and I'm fighting that tension, but yeah, there's just something about, and that's what I love so much about existentialism too as a philosophy, is that it really takes away all the fluffiness of things. And when people see it as pessimistic and negative, it's only because they're seeing the world through the rose-colored lens or through whatever filter they need to cope with the realities. And so I challenge anyone who thinks the Gothic and existentialism is like pessimistic and dark to see the light within it.
The light and kind of what it can bring to our lives. Well, tell us a little bit about existentialism. Obviously, that's a very loaded term. A lot of kind of different philosophers we associate with existentialism. Again, what is existentialism in your understanding? And what are some of the ideas that draw you to the existentialist?
Yeah, so I think as a school of thought, it really originated after World War II. So after World War II, you're seeing the rise of atheism because people on a global scale are asking, how could we get here? And so many of the philosophies prior to World War II were very logical, based in scientific reasoning. You know, you have like the Renaissance, the return of the Greek virtues and morality and everything. And then you get to like, how do we prove what love is, what justice is in a rational way. And then you get this just global turmoil that's like these questions haven't led us anywhere. We are nowhere closer to being a stronger human civilization. We're not existing peacefully. So, existentialism is a philosophy that's based off of existence. It's the idea that truth is subjective, not in the sense that it's relative, but all of these seeking universal truths and absolutes have guided us elsewhere. And it seems pessimistic because I think fundamentally the question of existentialism removes the question of whether or not God exists. And so it leans towards a more atheistic approach. Although if you ask like someone like Sartre, he would say you could be a Christian existentialist. You could choose to believe in God, but the question around truth isn't tangent to or adjacent to some kind of divine being. So like the three main pillars of existentialism are, if there is no God, where would we get our morals from? We don't have universal morals because there is no God. Therefore, you are 100% accountable for all that you do. And that's a huge, heavy burden. That's why the myth of Sisyphus is such a pillar in existentialism. But it really just boils down to your existence is your truth, and you're 100% accountable for all that you do. There's a lot of freedom in that. There's a lot of anxiety in that. But ultimately, you're building your reality. And so choose wisely.
Yes, it's kind of personal accountability. I hear that coming
Very
up a
much
couple of
so.
times. Yeah, obviously the myth of Sisyphus is kind of the famous existential text.
Absolutely.
So yeah, tell us, I guess, a little bit about the myth of Sisyphus, kind of why it's so central to the existentialist movement and what we can maybe learn from it.
Yeah, so if you don't know who Sisyphus is, it's part of Greek mythology. It's this idea that this demigod or this person, Sisyphus, he gets punished, and his punishment is to push a boulder up a rock for all of eternity. And so he pushes the boulder all the way up, it gets to the top, it rolls down, and he has to do it again. And so Albert Camus, my favorite existentialist philosopher, he takes this as a metaphor of life. And we're all pushing a boulder up a mountain. It gets to the top, and we have to do it again. There's a really famous passage in the myth of Sisyphus where he asks, why do we differentiate Monday to Friday if we're doing the same thing? Like every day, it should just be Monday, 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 Saturday, Sunday.
Sure.
If we're really doing the same thing over and over. And when you're doing the same thing over and over and you're asking yourself like why am I going to work, why am I paying taxes, why am I like dealing with this whatever this nuisance is in my life, there's this infinite why, and everything that we build around it, whether it's religion or our own truth, our own aesthetic, it's just because the burden of that question, why are we here, why are we doing this, is too heavy. And he has a poetic response where if we think of Sisyphus pushing this boulder up a mountain and we imagine in his head that he can think about whatever he wants, he is free in that sense. And so for Camus, existentialism and meaning comes from the mind. Like we are trapped in this reality, we're trapped in our bodies, we have to go to work, we have to pay bills, we have to do certain things, but no one can tell us how to think and how to feel, and there's power to that. Not every existentialist would agree with that take, but that's why the myth of Sisyphus means so much to me. I equate so much of my own identity to my brain. So when Camus was like, you're free in your mind, I was like, thank you so much. Thank you, my guy.
Yeah.
I need to be. I really need to be.
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting idea. I mean, the book famously closes with the passage with the quote, "One must imagine Sisyphus happy," right? So the idea is that
So it's such a loaded sentence because, like, if you know anything about philosophy, it's a very Kantian sentence to say, like, he's
sure,
almost telling you what to do. The whole book, he's like, you get to decide what means something to you. But at the end, his last sentence is like, we have to picture him happy. And it's like, well, first of all, we don't have to do anything. But who is the one? Why are, and there's still like an emphasis of imagining. Like, that's kind of how I
sure,
take it. Like, at the end of
yeah,
it, he's just telling us imagine. And that's really
imagine
like,
things.
and I love that. I really, really love that. But other people are like, it's too much. It's too dark. Like, I don't want to think
Yes.
about life as meaningless.
Yeah, I think part of it is kind of finding meaning in I've always taken it as kind of finding meaning in kind of the process of things also, and just creating meaning for yourself rather than, he starts off the book, he says that, if life is absurd. That usually leads a lot of people to suicide, because then, what's the point?
Sure.
But there's
Oh my
there's
God.
some sort of meaning embedded in all of that. And there's this passage in Hamlet, actually, where Hamlet says, I could be bounded in a nutshell, but count myself a king of infinite space. So
Ooh,
I think
literally.
the idea is the same, right? Where you have you don't have control maybe over your external surroundings, right? Or the way you're going about life. But what you can do is you can, count myself a king of infinite space. You can imagine something for yourself. You can really have this idea in your mind that is just diametrically opposed to your kind of objective reality. And that's a really powerful way to live life, because you no longer are bound by just, let's say the depression around you or whatever. You
Yeah.
can create the kind of happiness for yourself, or create whatever else you'd like for yourself, because, our mind has infinite possibilities. And I think that's kind of just the beauty of just in general being like an intellectual, or just
Yeah.
really loving ideas, right? Is I think at the end of the day, ideas are kind of what gives our lives meaning, rather than,
100%.
obviously things give our lives meaning as well. And, other external factors do. But at the end of the day, I think we can create our own meaning through latching onto various ideas. And I think that that's very powerful.
Yeah, and it's really hard. Like I remember at my lowest and my darkest, I had read Sisyphus, and I just remember being conscious like I can't make myself happy. Like I can't think of a single happy thought right now. And so that's a big and I think a very valid criticism is like depending where you are in life, it could be a lot
Right.
easier to just disassociate or to
Sure.
project meaning onto a really bad situation. But there are other times where the boulder is really, really heavy. And my only response is like at the end of it, Camus does say that Sisyphus is always stronger than the boulder. Like
Right.
that's kind of like the torment is like you do keep pushing it and you keep on keeping on, but it's not a pebble, it's a boulder.
Sure, sure. So it's hard. And I think there's value to this idea that also struggle gives
Mm-hmm.
us meaning, right? So I think that Viktor Frankl, right, who wrote kind of Man's Search for Meaning. I don't know if you've read it. Kind
No,
of
I
this
haven't.
like more like pop philosophy type book.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of people I think have really resonated with it. And he says that essentially human beings are driven by this quest for meaning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything that we do is done towards the aim of finding meaning in our
Mm-hmm.
lives. He kind of conflates that with, or not conflate, he compares that with Nietzsche, who kind of says that, we find meaning in kind of power struggle,
Yeah.
or Freud, we find meaning in sex, right? So he says, no,
Yeah.
no, no, or we were driven by power and sex, right? And he
Yeah.
says, no, 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 we're driven by the quest for meaning. And how do we find that meaning, right? And he says that there are several different ways. So love gives us meaning, work gives us meaning, and the last thing he says gives us meaning is kind of struggle and
Yeah.
overcoming difficult situations. And I think that really maybe echoes a little bit of what Camus says with the kind of, this idea of struggle, is that without struggle, you don't ever find meaning, right? Because you
Yeah.
emerge from the other side of the struggle, and there's a lot of reflection going on, and you figure out, okay, well, I've struggled through this XYZ thing. So, you know, therefore this thing means this to me. And I
Right.
think one thing that's very important for a human being societally is to face some sort of challenge, right? Because when we're just kind of
Yeah.
content and happy and everything's perfect,
Yeah.
we don't have anything to compare it to, and we start to lose this sense of meaning. So I think that's also a really interesting point that maybe ties into, pushing that boulder up in the myth of Sisyphus.
Definitely. And then when you brought up Hamlet as well, that was like when you first asked what is existentialism or like how do you understand it? I wanted to start with Hamlet because it's like Gothic and existential and it's amazing. And Camus actually in Myth of Sisyphus talks about Hamlet and because he talks about like different ways people cope with the meaninglessness of it. And so he
Sure.
said there are some people who are like actors and you have to envision like pretend you're the actor, you're on stage and you're playing Hamlet and he calls it catching the consciousness of the king. So you pick up the glass as Hamlet and you're on stage everyone in the audience has to suspend their reasoning and believe like, oh my God, Hamlet's right in front of me. But Camus says there's this moment like when you get off stage where you still find yourself kind of walking like a king and kind of like feeling like Hamlet. And that's kind of like, it speaks to the performative nature of how we go about it. Like right now, like I'm on a podcast talking about books, but it's like, let me do my turtleneck and my bangs and my glasses because like this is how, it's almost like a performance. And it's the way that you deal with like with this moment and bringing meaning into it. It's not a critique, it's not a praise, it's just like that's one way that we do it is we find ways that we enjoy performing and creating this illusion, even though like we're all kind of in on it, so it's not really an illusion, but still fundamentally it is an illusion.
Interesting. That sort of reminds me of, I don't know how much you like Sartre. I don't like Sartre as much. I'm more of a Camus person.
Yeah.
However, Sartre almost, I don't know if this is a little bit of a stretch, but he has this idea of bad consciousness, right? So bad faith, right? And part of that is he says it's almost kind of like overperforming your roles. So maybe it's a little bit of the opposite of the example he gives us, the waiter who is waiting tables at the restaurant, but then, the waiter is almost acting too much like a waiter, right? And then that's kind of done in bad faith, says Sartre. So what do you think about that idea? I don't know if that's kind of related, but it seems like Sartre's almost saying the opposite thing in terms of we shouldn't perform to that extent.
Because I think Camus touches on the good parts of it. It's like we do have to perform. I can't show up the way like as nothing at any point. Like context matters, society matters, all of that stuff.
Sure.
Sartre's very much like you are your actions. That's it. So that's the biggest difference between the two. Is Camus like you're free in your mind. Sartre is saying that you're free in your actions. So if you're choosing to like overperform and you're really like your whole identity is now this label, that's bad faith because you're defining yourself, you're restricting yourself, and you're not doing anyone anything by doing that. And I think he extends that analogy to religion, like when people are just like, oh, I know for a fact that like this is true and my whole identity is my religion. I think that's where he terms it bad faith is just like sometimes you have to suspend your reasoning or your identity because you're connecting it to this other idea. But ultimately for him, he's saying like, what you're doing. Like, you're choosing to sacrifice or surrender your identity for this idea. And he's just not with it. Whereas Camus like, if that means that it gives you meaning, like do it. Like that's
okay. So a little bit interesting. So a little bit opposed, right? Okay, I think that both of those they seem to be still going towards this idea of you have autonomy over your life, right? And 100%. You can choose kind of the life that you want to live. Okay, that's interesting. My main beef with Sartre, I like Camus a lot better.
Yeah, me too.
He's a little bit. I don't disagree with everything that he says, and I think, in fact, I appreciate his fiction more than his kind of philosophy writings. Because I think his fiction doesn't kind of shove the idea down your throat as much. I think with his philosophy, he tends to miss the mark a little bit. He has this one book. This is where I maybe started to dislike Sartre a little bit. Called The Anti-Semite and Jew. I don't know if you've read it.
I didn't know it. No.
But he basically says that, and this was written like right after World War II, and he doesn't, obviously he's on the side of, he's on the anti-Nazi side. He's not, defending. But he says essentially the Jew gets his identity from anti-Semitism. That without anti-Semitism, there's no Jewish identity, which I don't know that that's necessarily true. And to me, it almost seemed like he had never actually spoken to a Jewish person, and he is sort of foisting his philosophy on just how he understands life. So it almost seems like he has this kind of preordained philosophy, and then he found various aspects of life to kind of push that philosophy on. And so I think that might be my biggest beef with Sartre, amongst various other things. He had his personal life was also not
that could
fantastic.
Be a whole talk. But it sounds kind of Nietzschean to me, because at least especially the way Nietzsche talks about morals and religion in general is like everything is set up that like there's lions and there's sheep, and religion tends to be like how people cope with being not in the powerful
Thing,
position.
yeah.
And then as soon as they get there, then it just reverses and like the bottom becomes religious to justify like their suffering and stuff like that. So it almost sounds
Yep.
like that, where he's saying like, oh, the Jews originated or derived from this idea of suffering. And so you have to suffer under the power of someone else, and those would be anti-Semitics, and maybe that's where he's getting it from.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that I thought of.
So absolutely that's where he's getting it from. They're both getting it from Hegel, by the way.
Hegel,
So right,
sure.
so Hegel's whole by the way, Nietzsche's whole genealogy of morality
Yes,
is just
it's just
Hegel
better Hegel.
rewritten
It's more
in a
accessible
better
in Hegel.
context. Yeah.
Hmm.
So Hegel's whole thing, right? You have the master slave
Yeah,
dialectic, which
yeah.
is informed most of Western philosophy. I was talking to someone the other day, and I said, basically, everything boils down to either Hegel or Rousseau in some
Oh,
capacity.
okay.
That's my hot take.
Love it.
But so Hegel has this master slave dialectic, right? So you have the slave who works for the master, and the slave gains his kind of consciousness or identity through being the slave to the master, right? So you get your identity through being othered,
Yep.
right? So the identity of the slave means nothing unless the master is present. And
Right.
then the
Because you're
master
not
in
born
turn,
and thinking this is what I am. It is very
right,
contextual. Yeah.
right. It's kind of getting your identity from an external source, in this case, people,
Yeah.
right? And the master in the same way gets his identity from the slave, because the master is only the master in relation to the slave. And
Yeah.
then the other thing that Hegel says is then eventually there's a kind of a flipping of that. The slave kind of gains predominance because the master is nothing without the slave. And then you
Yeah.
have this sort of eternal, what he calls the Aufhebung, right? Which is kind of the, what's the translation? The
Like
kind
an
of annihilation
awakening.
or the
Yeah.
cancellation. It's more kind of annihilation or cancellation, but it can also mean like turnover, right?
Hmm.
And so you have the kind of continual historical progression in this way. And Nietzsche kind of uses that. Marx famously uses it for his, Marxist
Sure.
dialectic,
Yeah.
right? Of the, proletariat and the bourgeoisie get their identity from each
Yeah.
other. Marx was very much a Hegelian. And so, yeah, so Nietzsche and Sartre, they're both using this idea that the person gets his identity from the other consciousness. And we
Yeah.
have in the 20th century this idea of the other is very big in philosophy, right? And that
Oh my
comes.
God. Especially like Beauvoir.
Okay, so Simone de Beauvoir,
Yeah.
also a Hegelian in many ways, right? You have the Hegelian idea through gender. I haven't read as much of Beauvoir as I should, or I don't remember her as much as I like. I also don't like her. I have my very strong opinion
Yeah. I mean, it's
on
so,
philosopher.
and that's a whole conversation. It's so hard because there isn't a philosopher like pre 2000 that I think you can look at as a role model. That's like, wow, what a good ethical person writing on
Yeah,
ethics. Love that.
yeah.
So it's
So
very, very difficult. But I will say Ethics of Ambiguity is one of, like, at least the preface or the first chapter, whatever the first section is, worth the read.
worth the read.
The read. Worth how she drags every philosopher before her. Very audacious, very bold, very genius, I think.
Not read it. I've only read the second sex, which
It made me
again,
sad. It made me so sad. Okay, I was like,
I
okay, so
know
we're biologically weaker. Heard. Great.
it's. I think she opens up some can of worms in many ways that I don't appreciate.
Yeah.
She's basically responsible for the idea that the gender is a social construct, right? She was kind of the first person who put that forth. And I think, in the context that she was writing in, she was saying it in maybe a different way, but then you have these other kind of more contemporary philosophers come in, use that
Yeah.
idea, not as great. And then,
Totally.
if you look at her kind of personal life, she always is claiming, women, autonomy, freedom. She was just attached to Sartre the whole time. And meanwhile, Sartre's off, like, shuffling all of his students. Like, their whole
Yeah,
dynamic.
no, but she was like sending students his way. She'd be like, "Oh my God, you're his type," and then she'd be like, "Do you love me?" It's I don't know.
Like, yeah. I think part of it is, I can't remember where I read this, but I think I read somewhere that she was initially kind of unhappy with that whole arrangement, and then eventually she was just kind of like, whatever, there's nothing I can do about it, and I'm just really into Sartre, so I have to kind of,
It's
you
crazy.
know,
Yeah.
um, it's so insane. I don't know if you know what Sartre looked like.
Of
I don't
course.
know.
I'm very familiar. I'm very familiar.
I don't know how he's getting all of these
I
women.
mean,
It's so
I if you're a sapiosexual, I think that's the word for it, like when you're attracted to intellect. Like
sure.
that's all he's got. Maybe he's tall. I don't know if he was
Maybe
tall.
you saw. I don't know. We'll have to look into it. But
Yeah.
not not a great dude from what I understand. I actually bought this book. I actually have it right here. Um, it's called Intellectuals. It's
Hmm.
by Paul Johnson, and it's basically about how a lot of kind of philosophers and intellectuals that we really revere were just like terrible human beings,
Yeah.
and that there's one thing that Nietzsche actually says. Nietzsche kind of came up with this idea of you have to practice what you preach, right?
Okay.
If you are a philosopher and you say something and then you don't do it in your personal life, why should we take you seriously, right? And this kind of book
100%.
explores
Yeah.
some of that. And I think in many ways, Sartre was part of there's a whole chapter. I haven't gotten to it yet. I'm like halfway through this book, but there's a whole chapter fully just on Sartre.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because Sartre, like, and I always,
Sartre.
oh, there you go. I mean, you have to. He had this
Yeah,
interesting thing, like his in sculpting existentialism as like a real school of thought. His idea of like if I decided that I didn't want to get married, he would take
sure.
that as I'm technically saying it is okay for every woman on earth to not get married. So it's not like you have to, and it's not like you're acting from like a universal absolute sense, but just I think he was trying to like really display the weight of your actions. Like if you're doing it, you're saying it's okay if everybody else did it too.
Right,
I'm not saying that you have to
right.
look to someone else for an example because you're still totally autonomous and responsible for what you do, but your actions do signify that to the world. And it's like, why would you have that
Yes.
take though? Like that seems a little bit less subjective and a little bit more like do the right thing type of thing. But
Right. I mean, I think part of it is just a lot of these philosophers, what they do is they live for their ideas, right? Or these like intellectuals, right?
yeah,
And so when you are so married to an idea, it's really hard to then kind of actually treat human beings
a
in
hundred
a
percent.
positive way in your own life because the
Yeah.
idea is going to take precedence over everything always. And then so the kind of pattern you see with a lot of these philosophers is they're terrible to their wives, they're terrible to their friends, they're terrible to their families, right? Because they see all of these people, close people supposedly in their lives as kind of hindrances to their
Yeah.
philosophy, right? I just opened
Yeah.
that the Sartre chapter and the guy says, like most leading intellectuals, Sartre was a supreme egoist. Right,
Right.
and so you have this idea, and it's interesting because I wanted to make a reel about this at one point.
Mm.
Probably the number one thing that a lot of these kind of writers, intellectuals have in common is they all believe that they are the best of the best.
The
They're all
creme de la creme.
extremely creme de la creme, exactly, extremely arrogant, and to a certain extent, you can't blame them because
Totally.
they are
Totally.
actually they do actually historic history has proven that they are the best of the best. So
That's
it's
what I
funny
mean. It's
because
like when Djokovic is playing tennis, I used to not like him because Federer was everything to me. And so Djokovic was always like this arrogant, pompous, like just super aggressive, whatever. And now I'm just like, yo, he's kind of killing it though. Like he's kind of the best dude out there. So you have to talk the
yeah,
talk and walk the walk. Uh,
right,
yeah, but I mean
right.
the egos are nuts. And one of my favorite professors, he told us this anecdote of Sartre. So I don't know if it's true, but it like stuck with me. That he was giving this speech, and he said something along the lines of like, "I know I'm ugly. I know I'm so ugly, so I'm free. You telling me I'm
Interesting.
ugly doesn't do anything because I already know this." And it's like, dude, you were so hurt. Like you're trying to intellectualize your attraction to yourself. Like you know what it's just
Yeah,
that's the level of he was like, you're not gonna get me in any way, shape, or form. I've already intellectualized it. Like you can't call me
yeah.
ugly.
And I
I know
guess
that.
I guess despite his ugliness, he's still, you know,
He
landed
got
all the ladies he wanted, so many
yeah,
of them underage. So
right.
good for
Or is
him.
it usually ugly, I guess. Ugly on the soul level.
Yeah, I mean,
Ugly.
I think that that speaks volumes to the fact that what's in your brain is, I guess, more important at the end of the day. And a lot of these women, I'm sure, were going for Sartre for his kind of intellectual contributions. And he was also well known in his
Yeah.
time. He wasn't like one
I
of
mean, think
those.
about like Hannah Arendt and Heidegger. For me, will
Yeah,
always be the mystery. It's just like, and he never took back his Nazi views. He never
yeah,
apologized. And she cheated on her husband and like was with him for so many years.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't actually know that much about the details of that whole
It's
situation. Did she? Did she?
crazy.
Okay, you'll have to tell us.
Crazy. Yeah, well, she was his student, and so she's a German Jew, and he's just German. But yeah, she was his student, and then when the Nazi Party came into power, he was very vocal about his
He
views.
was a
He
Nazi.
was very,
Yeah,
and
that I know.
100%. It wasn't even like, oh, I kind of believe like some things and not other things. He was like the final solution guy. Meanwhile, having an affair with Hannah, saying that he loves her, you're not like them type of stuff, and just like
Interesting.
I think the only reason they broke up or something, just distance kind of took them apart, but like there wasn't ever an official, like, hey, you're
Retraction.
really, yeah. And even
Did
after the war, so many people who were part of the Nazi Party, like the intellectuals in Germany, profoundly apologized, whether it was to save
right?
face or because they meant it. Heidegger did not. He
Didn't.
was just like, no, this is what I'm standing for. I'm gonna be a
Interesting.
genius in all things phenomenology and a Nazi. And it's like, why? Why?
I thought he retracted. I thought he tried to distance himself from his Nazi views later. No,
I don't
is
think
that not a thing?
maybe.
No. Okay.
Maybe he did in the biopic that I watched and the professors I had, they said that he didn't, but I never
They were
looked
like,
into
yeah.
it in my own time. So
He's
maybe.
obviously there are a lot of kind of. Oh, maybe I'm thinking of Spangler. I think
Mm.
was kind of initially a Nazi sympathizer, and then he was kind of like, nah, no. I still think Heidegger. Maybe not. Maybe you're right.
Maybe
We'll
we'll
look
look
into it.
into
We'll look
it.
into
But
it
like,
after this.
if
We'll see.
I'm wrong, I'm so sorry. This is just
No,
like
no,
I'm
no,
just
no.
repeating.
I could be like fully misremembering, but yeah, I mean, obviously,
He still
still
got
very
with
bad.
him. He still got with him while he was a Nazi, and that's like
Yeah.
so.
And that's crazy. Yeah, I mean, and now I guess we remember them as like one of the like intellectual
I
couples
know, and I love
along
like
with
there was
Sartre and Beauvoir, de Beauvoir. So,
exactly.
you have these crazy intellectuals. Okay,
But we love their work.
well, let's maybe also transition a little bit to we've been talking a lot about philosophy. I know you could go on
Sure, yeah,
all
that's my
day. I
show.
want to talk a little bit about kind of literature, and we started with this idea of the Gothic, right?
Yes.
And kind of Gothic literature and how it maybe relates to existentialism. And I want to hear a little bit about your book. So I know you're writing
Mhm.
a novel kind of that you've described as Gothic. Tell us a little bit more about the
Yeah.
novel.
Thank you. I'd love to. So it's a historical fiction. I've been describing it as a Sherlock Holmes cast in an Edgar Allan Poe world. It's set
Ooh.
in Philadelphia, 1888, Victorian era. And I'm 2 chapters away from finishing the first draft. And the way that it's coming, thank you. The way that it's coming into fruition is that it's a murder mystery within a murder mystery. And what I
Ooh.
mean by that is the main character is a detective and there's a serial killer on the loose. So a lot of characters are trying to figure out who is this person that's killing everyone, but at the same time the philosophical theme is what are the things that we're doing that's harming ourselves. So it's a murder mystery that's taking place in real life, but it's also an investigation of what are we doing subconsciously, consciously, whatever it may be, to harm ourselves. And which is a very
Interesting.
existential question and also very reflective of the picture of Dorian Gray, where it's just like, yeah, you're acting one way this way, but your portrait looks a little different. Why is that? And I'm not diving into the paranormal at all. I want it to be very realistic.
Sure.
It's not going to be inaccessible. Like I think people hear philosophy and existentialism and they're like, no, thank you. But it's like it's a story that you can enjoy, and if you want to read really deep into it, there's a lot for you to find. But ultimately, my goal with the book is just to promote some sort of self-reflection and intrigue, curiosity. And maybe I just love writing morally gray characters. Like the last thing I'm doing is preaching that this is the right thing and this is the wrong thing. All my characters are
Sure.
flawed, and you'll just relate
Sure.
or not relate on different levels. But yeah, I really like positioning it as a murder mystery because I think essentially then it's just a book about asking questions. And you're just watching the characters figure themselves out and figure out this giant question together.
Very cool. I really like this idea that you said it's accessible, right? And I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of really, really good literature has those kind of philosophical themes, right, embedded into it. But at the same time, I do think that literature historically has had meaning to a wide variety of people, right? And it's touched a wide variety of people. So I think with literature, the really cool thing, a really great example is Robert Frost's poems,
Mm.
right? You can kind of read them as um the what's oh my god, I'm blanking on the name. His most famous poem, Stopping by Wood.
There's
God
so
damn
many
it! I should
that,
stopping
oh my god, do you want me to
stopping in
Google
the
it?
woods on a.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, yeah.
I'm
No, hold on. I got you. I
fail,
got
epic
you.
fail. You know which one I'm talking about, right? Okay, so you can
Yeah.
read that poem as this
I'm looking at. I'm
traveler
looking at.
stopping by
Something
woods on a
about
snowy
Vivian.
evening.
Yeah.
Yes, stopping by
Stopping
woods
Wolf.
on a snowy evening. Okay, I got it. All right, we're back in business.
I'm not a
uh,
poetry person. Like if it's not Edgar Allan Poe, I don't know your poem. I'm so sorry, but
sure.
I'm
Okay.
familiar with Robert Frost.
So the reason I'm, I guess, comparing this to Robert Frost is you can read it as just, this traveler, he's tired, he's stopping by the woods, all of this. And that's why I think it appeals to so many people is it's just this very simple poem. And I used to not like Robert Frost because I thought he was maybe too simplistic. And
Mm.
then I started to kind of read more and more of him, and I realized that there's actually this like very deep philosophical angle to this poem. And you can also read it as kind of a metaphor for death, right? That's kind of what the poem's about. You should
Ooh.
check it out because I feel like you'll
So,
appreciate it.
so
And
beautiful.
so the final couplet of the poem is, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep, and it's kind of
Mm.
repeated twice. And so you can read it again as just like, okay, this traveler is just
Yeah.
going miles. He has to, whatever, 10 more miles before he can go to bed at night. Or you can read it miles to go before I sleep, kind of
Yeah.
a metaphorically for life. And it's a really interesting because so much of Frost's poetry, I think, is like that. It's very accessible, which is why he was very well known in his time and a lot of people read him. But then it also has that kind of more literary angle. It has that kind of deeper meaning. So if you want it, it's there. And I think that's kind of the
Yeah.
hallmark of a lot of great literature is there are so many different layers to it. And at the end of the day, it should be fairly accessible. And I would say, obviously there are, varying levels of difficulty, right,
Hmm.
amongst different authors. But at the end of the day, I think most literature should be accessible on some level. But then the genius of a lot of great literary works is that you can also then pack it with meaning. So it sounds like that's maybe a little bit of what you're doing with you
Yeah.
have the maybe the murder mystery story that's maybe going to be just kind of fun and a lot of people are going to relate to that, but then you also have this question, right, the big questions,
Yeah.
which I talked about today on Instagram is kind of, I think
Mm.
that's what brings literature together is this kind of fundamental search for big questions, right? I think that's
100%.
what's really, really cool about
Yeah.
literature is you can have a story at the plot level and then on top of that you have these kind of
Yeah.
different layers. And I think that's the number one thing that makes literature so cool.
And to bring it back to my Bible, the picture of Dorian Gray, in the preface, he says, all art is at once surface and symbol. Those that go beneath the surface do so at their own peril. And so that's the whole
Mm,
thing. And like that's been my philosophy before I even understood that that was my philosophy. Where it's like
oh,
everything that you see and
interesting. Yeah.
interact with is an opportunity to go as deep as you want to, as deep as you're brave enough to go. And I
Yeah.
grew up reading Nancy Drew and Sherlock Holmes. Like they were really like my
Yeah.
first Oh my God. So murder mystery, I was like, when I read Picture Dorian Gray, I was like, I'm going to be an author. Period. This is like the best experience of my life. I have to recreate it.
Oh, I love
And
it.
so now, and that was like, I read it when I was 13. Now I'm 30, and it's still like I get that same joy of like I'm really doing what I've always been thinking about doing. And I love like the fact that I read it as a teenager and I didn't understand it, but I still loved it and I just grew with it. Like I reread The Picture of Dorian Gray every year around my birthday because I'm just like
Oh, I love
ritualistic
that.
about it. But I want that, like I want my book to potentially be that for someone too, where it's just like it's just there for you. And that's why
Yeah.
we talked about this offline once. I'm really struggling with like how much sex I want to put into the book because like my favorite books don't have any sex in them. Like it's all like Victorian Gothic stuff, and if it's sex, it's just implied, and it doesn't matter, and it doesn't like take away from the plot, further the plot. But I know like this day and age, you gotta spice it up because you gotta have Jacob Elordi play the male lead. So it's like there's gotta be something like really hot about it. And I just like I
Yeah.
struggle so much with it because I just don't
It's
do it.
it's tough. Yeah, I mean that's another whole can of worms is the sex thing.
Yeah.
Right?
The sex thing, the sex question, the second sex, all of it.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I've talked a lot about this just in general
Yeah.
in the publishing industry. It's really big right now. I think it's a huge problem. I don't think literature needs to have sex in it to be good. I don't
Totally.
think literature needs to have graphic sex in it, period. A lot of people will disagree with me. That's okay. My personal take.
No, but
And,
the key word there is it
you
doesn't
know,
need it. So
right,
when people are looking for it, it's like, okay, it's a choice,
right.
but why is that becoming a standard or an expectation across any genre? It's like we're
Yeah.
somehow still expected to include this because it's like part of life, I guess. But like,
Yeah,
okay, so is death, but if I'm writing about death, suddenly nobody wants to work with me.
right.
So,
It's tough. I think I was recording another podcast a couple days ago with someone, and we were talking about how a lot of publishing professionals today just don't want to have anything too negative because
yeah,
they don't want people to have to sit there and like think negative thoughts. And it's almost like kind of this like Fahrenheit 451
hmm
dystopia of,
really,
right, the reason that there's book burning going on in that society is because
yeah,
books make you sad or books make you feel things, right? And that's good. You should feel things when you read books. And I think there's almost kind of numbness going
yeah.
on. Right. So one of the most popular literary fiction books today is My Year of Rest and Relaxation.
Okay.
And the book is essentially about this girl who doesn't want to feel anything in life. So she takes all these drugs and she just sleeps through life.
Mm,
And the fact that that is kind of the probably most popular literary fiction book today, I think just
mm,
says so much about our society and what our culture wants to push is this idea that you should not feel anything because life is fundamentally meaningless. And so you should just sleep through all of it. And the crazy thing about that book is I expected it to kind of take a stand against that sort of behavior. And
yeah.
instead, it's just kind of allowed. And at the end, the main character just kind of goes back to sleep
Oh,
and just doesn't want to live her life. And I think that that's kind of fundamentally, it says a lot about the values that we have today, and at least what the
yeah.
publishing industry wants to push on us is this idea that, life is meaningless. We should just sleep through it. We shouldn't think any kind of difficult thoughts. We
Yeah.
shouldn't have to, think philosophically about anything. I mean, the number one comment I always get on my novels with literary agents and other publishing professionals is, cut out this like philosophical part. It's too digressive. It's too philosophical. And that
As soon
just,
as I get an agent, they're gonna just be taking like big X's to every page. They're like, no, no,
yeah,
great.
it
Yeah,
just,
look forward to.
it drives me up a wall. I mean, I haven't even gotten an agent because I refuse to
The
make these
one
changes.
The one email you shared with me where someone said like I personally love this, but like I could never like represent or work with it.
Yeah,
I was just like I think of it literally every day because I'm like, what is this disconnect? Like
right.
you're in a position to help push this forward and you like it, but you're like, nah, I can't do it. Who
Yeah,
else is gonna do it then? What do
right,
you mean?
right.
Oh
It's
my
so
God.
crazy to me. And you know, I've gotten so many emails of just like, I can't sell this. And the crazy thing is that you you as a publishing professional, your goal is to sell something. Your goal is to want to bring something into the world, and your job is to sell it, to figure out how to sell it. And it's so
Literally
crazy
put a
that,
naked girl on the cover. Like figure out
like,
an interesting cover.
right.
Hire a graphic designer.
And
Sold.
the crazy thing is the way that things are pitched right now is always like, this thing meets this thing, or like this
Yeah.
retelling of this thing, or like this angle of this thing. So it's always eh, something pre-existing,
Yeah.
like
Well,
it's
and
building on something pre-existing.
I fell for that because when I introduced my book, I was like, it's a Sherlock Holmes cast, Edgar Allan Poe world. Because I know that's like, the vernacular and like what you're supposed to say. But now it's like you have to use something that's published within the last 3 years. It's been
Yeah,
successful. And like, I only have Dan Brown's The Secret of Secrets. I can't name you another book that's been published in the last 3 years because I'm looking towards like, if it's not at least a
right.
100 years old, besides like French existentialism, I don't know. Like Margaret Atwood and Dan Brown, that's all that you get from me in terms of 21st century. And that's a shortcoming of mine. I'm not out here proudly saying that I don't like 21st century literature. I'm just saying I haven't been recommended a life changing book yet, and I very much look forward to that when it happens.
I mean, I think, you know, I also don't read that much 21st century literature. And the reason I don't read it is because just most of it, you know, there's some stuff like the older, like Donna Tartt, like Kazuo Ishiguro,
Right.
contemporary authors, but again, older generation. The new stuff coming out today is just terrifying. It's not very well written. It's all written in the same style. It's all about the same thing. It's all the same sort of protagonist, and it's really crazy because the issue is that you basically, if you want to be published in literary fiction, you need to get an MFA. Right, that's kind of the
Oh,
barrier. Or the vast majority of literary fiction authors come from MFA programs because that's just, you know, how you get published. And
true.
MFA programs teach you to write in one certain way. And the issue with that is that there's more than one way to write. There's more than one style that's acceptable.
Yeah.
And there's basically no more innovation going on in the writing world because everything is just kind of minimalist. Everything needs to be kind of polished down. Digressions need to be cut out. And the crazy thing is, after interacting with so many publishing professionals, I know exactly what sort of book I could write to get published tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't want to write that book because I would basically just be creating an exercise of, I am writing exactly the sort of book that you want, in the
Yeah.
exact sort of style that you want,
Yeah.
with the exact kind of plot that you want. And at that point, it's like, why write at all? It defeats the purpose of literature
That's
if
what I
I'm
was
just
gonna
writing
say.
something that someone
Yeah.
else wants.
No,
And
that's exactly it. And
I
like,
that that's
mm-mm.
heartbreaking to
It
me.
really is because when I'm reading, I have a pen and a highlighter and a cup of coffee or like tea or whatever. But I'm like engaging with the author. Like that's
Yeah,
why I like philosophy because it almost feels like I'm having a conversation with someone and they just have a much stronger, cleaner argument. So I can only like
yeah,
respond in the margins and they're long gone, so they don't have to respond or see my cute little notes. But that's what I love is like I want to feel like I'm talking to someone or I'm learning from someone. And this is like it's
yeah,
gonna have faults, it's gonna have weird quirks, and like I I I want to be able to like read something and be like, oh, that's definitely Camus. Like I can tell that's his writing style. And I can do that with Dan Brown. Like I love his writing style. I can kind of do it with Margaret Atwood. Like I don't know, but I just mean like I love getting to know that voice because like you and I
yeah.
are speaking, we speak very differently. So that should come across in our writing too. It shouldn't be like, oh, I have no idea who wrote it. Like they both just
Absolutely.
have brown hair and bangs, and like so it's the same thing. Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Right, right. And I think, every single writer ideally should have a distinct style and a distinct voice that kind of mirrors who they are. And the fact that so many of these writers, I think today, sound the same is just terrifying to me. And the crazy thing is, so I'm working on this kind of just set of essays where I'm taking a look at various authors' styles. And I pull up so many books where everyone sounds the same. And you look at the authors and they come from completely different backgrounds, completely different places, completely different identities, everything different.
Yeah.
But they all sound exactly the same because, again, they're going through this program that teaches them that this is the correct way to write. And I think that that's so harmful in insisting that there's kind of a better way to write or a better style to write
And especially with
because,
AI, like I'm
yeah,
not, don't sell me a book written by AI, but I'm just saying, like, we have those tools. So if you really want cookie cutter books, do it. And then let the others who don't want to also
yeah,
exist.
yeah,
I don't understand why
exactly.
we can't exist. Like, why can't voices
It's
exist?
it's so crazy. I mean, you go into a bookstore and anything published since roughly like 2020, the last 5 years or so, it all sounds the same. Before that, you could find
Yeah.
variety, sure. The last 5 years, exactly the same, kind of minimalist, pared down writing. The other thing, the other comment I always get from literary agents is cut out anything that like this passage like slows down the reader, like it takes you out of the story,
But
and
that's
it's
called
like,
pacing. But that's called pacing. Like it's an art form because it's not supposed to be like tick tock, tick tock, tick. It's
yeah,
not. Like it's
yeah. Well,
ugh.
it's supposed to,
Right.
according to them, it's supposed to kind of continually go forward. And at that point, it's like, okay, well, then write a screenplay. That's fine. Like, if great, there's an art form for that.
Literally.
Um,
Literally.
and I think it's crazy. The other thing I was told is that, you know, I don't know if you've read literature, right? Okay, you're familiar with the vast majority of older literature. It doesn't have that much dialogue. It has
No.
dialogue, but it
Girl.
doesn't have as much dialogue as we would expect, right? It's
100%.
not, the story isn't told through scenes.
No.
It's kind of told through this more like distant, almost like abstract storytelling.
Yeah.
You'll have some scenes, and then as you go kind of more and more modern, you have maybe more scenes, whatever. But if you look
And
at, again,
some of it are told
historically
in like
literature,
flashbacks. Like Frankenstein is all a flashback. Wuthering Heights is told by the nanny as a
right,
flash, like a retelling of what 20 something years. And I'm just like, this is what okay. But that's Wuthering
right,
Heights. I'm not talking about it. I don't want to talk about
and
it. But I just
and
mean like,
so
yeah, it's just composition.
most, I would say the vast majority of literature is written in that style. Even like, okay, I just randomly have The Great Gatsby here.
Oh,
There's some, okay, so there's some dialogue, there's a lot of dialogue, but at the same time there are also passages where it's kind of this like setup, it's this kind of description,
mhm.
it's reflection, especially towards the end. The final chapter is a lot of kind of
Yeah.
reflection of kind of what Nick is going through. And so basically everything that I get told today by literary agents is make this into a scene. Like, this is too like abstract. It doesn't
It's like the
uh
show don't tell. And it's like, no,
yes,
I'm
oh
gonna
yes,
tell it.
exactly.
I'm gonna tell
Everything
it.
I
I'm gonna tell it
Yeah,
well.
the show
Yeah.
don't tell thing drives me crazy. I'm going to make a video about this
Please
because
do. Please
there
do so
you
I can
should do.
repost it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you need both, I think.
You need
And
it.
you can't just show everything. And I think there's just this obsession with showing. And so I
Yeah.
had this one literary agent tell me, like, just rewrite this whole thing as a scene with dialogue. And I did, and then my actual readers, my beta readers who were reading the novel were like, I like your kind of beautiful, like, descriptive passages, the kind of philosophical passages, but
Yeah.
I don't like it when everything just becomes dialogue. and so it's crazy because it seems like readers want the exact opposite
Yeah.
of what the literary agent wants.
It's
And to me,
so
that's
frustrating.
insane. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
But
so I'm kind of,
that's the art form of a book, though. Like, you get to
yeah,
pause the dialogue and guide the reader's attention to something. Like, one of my
yeah,
favorite scenes that I'm writing in this book, and it's not a spoiler at all, but there's like dialogue, and then I stop and I'm like, and like this character has a flashback to like when he was a
right,
kid. And then you understand like why he's so heated, but you don't understand the
sure,
beginning. So it's just like that little break is everything. And then like, did I
yeah,
expand on it too much and describe the scene? Sure. But it's just like that's what books give you the opportunity to do is you get to go inside the brain. You get to like
right,
focus on the setting and like why is the wallpaper yellow? Like
yeah,
these are questions that actually matter. And it's not a waste of time. It's not fluff. We don't live in the 1900s where we get paid a penny for every word, so we're just like vomiting. Like everything can be very, very purposeful. And instead, they're just like, I need simple sentences. I don't want to see
yeah.
semicolons. I don't want to see metaphors. I just want like, it was 5 o'clock. I just finished work. I got on the train, and it's like, I'm done. You
And
had
it's
three
it's
sentences, and that's what you used. Like those were
it's
your
so
choices.
crazy. It's
Yeah.
so crazy. It drives me insane. I hate
Nuts.
the whole minimalist thing. It's just I want to write long sentences. The other thing I always see is, oh, you can't write sentences over 15 words or it's going to slow people down. And it's like
There's a word limit?
that you I unofficially
Girl.
um like I've had my latest novel it's basically a stream of consciousness novel.
Mm-hmm.
It's just this kind of this girl and she's just kind of telling her life.
Yeah.
And so the thing with stream of consciousness is the human brain doesn't think in these like 4 word sentences that are choppy. Like our brains
I
are
was gonna
messy.
say, can you imagine? Like, oh, word limit reached. New thought.
Yeah.
Like, what?
And so this one literary agent told me basically like cut down the sentences so that they're easier to read.
For
And
who? For
it's
who?
insane. It's insane because it's almost like I feel like so when I do Instagram reels, right? I've been trying to watch like how to make your videos go viral, whatever, just because I need to reach
Absolutely.
a
Yeah.
bigger audience. Fair
Yeah.
enough. So,
And you're
and
doing
it's
an
like,
amazing job, by
you
the way.
know,
Your reels are really, really good.
thank you.
Yeah.
And it's like, cut out fluff, start with a hook that's going to grab attention,
Do
make
something
sure that
like
nothing slows down, use
Mhm.
like, don't use language that a fourth grader wouldn't understand. And it's like, fine. Okay, for Instagram, I will do that.
Correct.
But the same rules, it's almost like they've taken those same rules and just applied it to literature. And for
Yeah.
literature, for writing, I refuse to do those things because
No.
the book that I'm writing is not an Instagram reel. Those are 2 different formats.
Yeah.
And it annoys me that there are certain things that I have to do for Instagram, but I
Can you
don't view it
imagine
as an
someone
art form in the same way.
can
For
you
social
imagine someone
media,
telling
I'll do it.
you here, like, hey, don't make up words because nobody knows what these words are, and so it's really
Yeah. And
off-putting when
I
you.
hate that because I just read Pale Fire by Nabokov, and there were so many words I didn't know. And I think I know all of the words. And I would look up these words and half of the words would be like coined by Nabokov. Like he would just make up his
Yeah,
own words. And that's
yeah,
great. And I love that. And now the word is in the freaking dictionary and it says coined by Nabokov. That's
and I
amazing.
I love it. Like there has to and maybe it's just me and I'm projecting, but there can be a rigorousness to it. Like
Yeah.
I taught philosophy for a little bit after I graduated, and I was always telling the students like reading philosophy isn't like reading a book. You're not going to read this and it's just like line by line. Like you're supposed to read and be like, "What did I just read? Like what does this mean?" And if you don't get it, you can't move on. Like you have to understand each section, and so there's like a way to read it. There's words that you have to understand because if it's translated, like Descartes uses passions, and we think of passions as like, oh, emotions and whatever, but for him it's thought,
Sure.
just like the
Sure.
French say. And so it's just like there are tiny little things where once you learn it, it's like, cool, now you're in it and you're better because of it, and this is what learning is. And I think there's an allergy to learning. There's like, once you graduate, you have all the knowledge you need, and everything else has to be entertainment. Like, we're
Yep.
not here to question anything, to grow. And I'm very allergic to that approach to anything. It's like, don't pick up
Yeah.
the book then. No one is forcing you to read. But if you're going to read, why wouldn't you want something that like makes you think, sparks your curiosity? It can be entertaining. There are books for entertainment, but don't say every book has to be a distraction from your life. Like
Right.
it could make your life better. It could make your life worse, and then it gets better because it's a struggle that you've overcome. Like at the end of the day, books are great, and let them be great. And I hate that I use the word great because that's not good.
Yeah,
You
and I
know,
think right with a lot of books, it's like, especially kind of more these like more difficult, abstruse books. It's, it can be a struggle to read them. You have to sit there, you have to pay
yeah,
attention. If I'm reading something from like the 1980s, it might take a little bit less attention than if I'm reading something from the 1700s, right?
totally, yeah,
But usually I find the older book to be more rewarding because once you've gotten through it, you
absolutely,
have this like epiphany, and it's this amazing moment. It's almost kind of, I like to compare it to the
yes,
runner's high, right? If you
yes,
go for a run, it kind
yes,
of sucks, but then after you feel this like
yeah.
amazing like dopamine hit, all of this. And the
And then
same
you
thing, I
kind of
think.
like understand why these intellectuals think that they're the hottest thing in the world. So it's like,
Yeah,
yo, they can speak about like the craziest things for the longest time and consistently. Like that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
exactly. And
Yeah.
I think it's so amazing that you so many people, I think, have this experience. Like a lot of people have that same response that I have, and people who don't know what that's like, it's hard to convince them to read something difficult because they don't
Totally.
understand the like the after effect, that moment of insightfulness, right? And
Yeah.
so yeah,
I
I mean,
feel
I think it's just
completely. I was trying to explain it to someone. I have a really close friend. She doesn't read, but I was like, there's sometimes like there's just this sentence, and you see like they put those words together
yep.
perfectly. Like you have to like stop and like your breath. You're like, like what a sentence. And like most people are like, cool, that's an Instagram caption, and it's kind of that feeling, except it gets tattooed on your soul, so it's like a little deeper. But that's really like when I see a great sentence, I'm just like, wow. Like
It's
you could
yes.
have picked any words and you put those and it's beautiful, and like I genuinely feel like I'm looking at art because it's just like it just resonates, or maybe it's so surprising that whatever it is, it's a feeling you can't describe except like it just hits you. And you
Yeah.
think like, how can this ink on paper give me like a physical reaction? And it's like, well, that's it. And then when you add
I
philosophy to it, and it like completely destroys how you think of the world, and it's just like, I mean, I guess that's what drugs is like. I don't know. Books are my drugs, and it's
same.
not safe all the
I
time, but I love it.
that's crazy. I have the exact same reaction, exact same experience, and it's like
Yeah.
that's amazing, and that's what it should do. And I love that you like articulated that exact same feeling that I have when I read an amazing sentence or when
And
I
it's
wite an amazing
rare.
sentence.
It's
I
rare.
have this.
That's the thing is
It's
like every book doesn't have it. So when you do come across it, you're like,
yeah,
it's been so
yeah,
long since I've felt this way.
yeah. Just like
Yes.
that one sentence that'll stand out. And I sometimes, when I write, sometimes it'll take me, some scenes I'll go through very quickly. Sometimes it'll take me a while to like, especially when I go back and edit, she's like
Yeah.
make the perfect sentence. And I spent when I was editing my most recent novel, there was this one sentence that I spent like 1 hour just editing. It was just like one sentence. I spent like 1 hour
Yes.
fully on it. And then I finally got the perfect version, and I sent it to all my friends, and I was so excited about it. And they were just like, that's
Yes.
cool.
Ooh, I made a whole reel. I'm like, there's no context. I can't give any spoilers. I just wrote the best thing in the world, and I wanted to remember this moment by. Like that's a whole reel on my page because it's just like a delicious sentence that I can't believe I did, and I'm sure I'm
Yeah.
gonna read it and be like, "Girl, you're crazy." Like it's a fine sentence, but in that moment, I was like, "Oh my god!" Like
Yeah,
wow.
you have this feeling of like, and I think that's just the power of language, and the fact that
Yes.
you've described the experience that I've had so many times, and I'm sure so many other people also have that experience when they're touched by a sentence.
Yeah.
They're
And
again that
sometimes
imprint on the
music.
soul, right?
Yeah. It can be music, it can be movies, and like for me it just happens to be, I mean, The Prince of Egypt, music and movies also has that impact on me,
Sure.
but like books is just yeah. It's just like chasing that high, and it's just the best feeling in the world.
It's another level of literature. I mean, yeah, I think that's that's definitely the experience that I've had, and that's why I fell in love with literature from a fairly young age. I would
Yeah.
say is kind of this idea of this experience of just reading this amazing string of words and wondering how the author did that, and also just wanting to do that myself because,
Yeah.
for me, part of the reason I write is books have just fundamentally changed my life for the
Hmm.
better, and I hope to have that effect on someone else. I want to kind of pass the baton, so to speak, right? Or pass the torch
Yeah.
because I've had this experience from, older writers, a lot of whom are dead. And I want to, hopefully
I
make
know.
some sort of difference in someone's life. And, I've had some just from my random unpublished novels, I've had a couple people reach out to me and say like this passage like moved me to tears, or I really, really, really resonated with this book and this was just so beautiful. And I think that is what I feel like my purpose in life is to have that
Absolutely. Yeah.
experience, have that kind of effect on someone
Yeah.
through words. And to me, words are the most uh powerful mode of communication, right? And to have that experience, to have that imprint on someone else's, I think just an unparalleled experience.
Yeah, and it's crazy because I told my mom that I was doing this podcast with you, and I said something about how like we're probably gonna talk about existentialism and life being meaningless, and she's like, "You don't think life is meaningless?" I was like, "Yeah, no, of course it is," and she was like very upset. But she was talking about like, but you love books, like you always have. Where do you think that came from? Like that has to come from somewhere. That has to mean something. And I was like, it doesn't, but I think that that's what makes it better. Is like it's a constant. I could choose to walk away if I wanted to, but like I won't. I'm gonna continue to chase, what makes me happy, and that's books. And I think I do feel very lucky to have a passion. I don't know if everybody has a passion. I think that's a cool question. Is like, do some people have it and some people don't? Have you just not found it yet? Whatever, but I'm very lucky that from a very young age, like I've always gravitated towards books. I've always wanted gift cards to Borders and Barnes and Noble. I wanted to be an author, a teacher, a librarian. Like just keep me around books and I'm happy. Like I'm sure I
Good
was
to
thinking
go.
like my wedding's coming up in August and I was like, what book am I gonna bring to like I just want to have like a book next to me. Like what book is it gonna be? It's gonna be The Picture of Dorian Gray. But it's just like in big moments, I still want to be surrounded by the things that I give meaning to. I know this is
Yeah.
just like dead trees. Like I'm not feeling that this is some like magical force. But I love her. I love all of them.
Well, I do think in many ways there's like this magical force
Mhm.
to books. Like I think again, like we if life is fundamentally meaningless, which I maybe
Yeah, what
disagree
are
with
your
that
thoughts?
premise.
No, no, no. I was gonna say I'm so selfish.
But
What are your thoughts on that? Don't let me take over with my
I mean,
thoughts.
I think we fundamentally, given that maybe life is meaningless, I think it's our duty to create meaning. That's kind of
Okay,
my take, is that
beauty.
we all find meaning somewhere, and meaning I think arises in different ways for different people, but I think we all have kind of a duty to ourselves to figure out what is it that gives our lives meaning. I know what that is for me. I think other people have, different responses. As, Viktor Frankl says, different, you can derive meaning from different places. But
Yeah,
I think at the end of the day, again, ideas have given me so much meaning in my life, and the way that we get access to ideas is through books. So to me, I think books have just given my life so much purpose. And yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, I that's why it makes me sad when someone doesn't read at all. I think they're missing out.
Yo, the
They're
average, I read somewhere months ago that the average American reads less than one book a year, which,
yeah,
the math, whatever, but it's just
I
like,
can believe that.
I
I
know, but me too, because it's like I'll publish a book and not, like, barely anyone in my circles will read it. And that's no offense to anyone, because, like, some people just aren't readers and it's a really
yeah,
big ask. But it's just also like, how did we as a society fail? Like, how did we just not
yeah,
I don't know. Like we had Harry Potter and Twilight, and then I guess just like nothing after that. Because most people I know read those, one of
yeah,
those,
yeah.
and then that was
Well,
it.
I think part of it is just the digital age, right?
Yeah, yeah,
People used to have, I mean, if you think about like the Victorian era,
I do
like
a lot.
what did you yeah, sure. Right? What did you do like after work? Well, first of all, women weren't, a lot of novels were written for women, right? Because women
Yeah,
weren't working all day. And so women were consuming a lot of novels, but even back then men were reading a lot. But you came home from work, let's say, and then what did you do? You read a book. I mean, so many
yeah,
Victorian novels, you have these scenes of someone is sitting like in the living room and they're reading a book together, right? They're reading out
yeah,
loud. Like so many Victorian novels have
yeah,
that, right? Or like it's like an older like member of the family and it's like a blind grandmother and then the main character is like reading to the blind grandmother, right? So I think reading in many ways was a way for people to bond before,
yeah,
you know, the
yeah.
internet, whatever. Now we have technology. We in many ways create those bonds through social media, and you know
Yeah.
there are some upsides to that. You and I met
Totally.
on social media.
Totally.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And there have been so many good things. I met so many other cool people who share kind of my values and my interests on social
Yeah.
media. And so I'm not saying it's, you know, it's a net negative on society, but that does mean that now we don't necessarily feel the need for that connection through
Right.
reading. And I think it's one of the most kind of intimate things that you can do
That's
with
what I was gonna
someone.
say. Yeah.
When my fiance and I read the same book,
Ugh.
especially at the same time, I feel like we have this kind of like deeper connection with each other
Yeah,
almost.
sure.
And even like on like the friendship level, right? If you read the same books as your friends, you bond over that.
Yep.
Like when I went to college at Columbia, obviously I have many issues with Columbia that we won't get into today, but the one thing that they did well was you had this kind of core curriculum where, and the premise was that everyone in the freshman class read the same works of literature
Mm.
and you connected over that, right? And so the way that they always pitched it was you can walk into some random elevator in a freshman dorm and just spark a conversation about the Iliad because everyone is
Oh
reading it.
my
And
God.
I had that experience and I loved that, of that
Oh,
we had this sort of like shared connection with literature and with these great works that have given human beings something to think about for
yeah.
many years. And I think that's kind of the power of books, is just really bringing us together in so many ways.
Yeah.
And you know, unfortunately now we have social media to bring us together, so, or we have memes, right? People bond over memes, whatever. And so there's maybe not as much of a need to read, but I do think it's so important at the end of the day, because there's a deeper level to reading books that doesn't exist with just kind of looking at a meme or, you know,
No,
going on
and I
social
think
media.
like social media is mainly for connecting with other people. Like you're seeing other people's content and you're consuming.
Right.
Reading is also a very like intimate thing. I like very
Yep.
rarely. I'm reading one book with a friend right now, but otherwise like if I'm reading by myself and it's a
Yep.
lonely thing, especially when it's good and you're like, "Oh, I want to talk about it."
You want
And
to
like
share
my
it? Yeah.
fiance is super cool and anytime I'm like, "Oh my God, read this sentence. Can I tell you about this book?" And he'll always be down to listen and I'm very grateful for that. But I think there is this connotation that reading is a very isolating thing
Yep.
because all the book clubs that I see at least are like new releases and whatever
Yeah.
and you're letting someone else
Yep.
decide what's good as opposed to like, hey, let's read a classic and hate it together or love it together or something that has withstood the test of time for a reason. It doesn't have to be part of the canon. Not everything in the canon is great. But I just mean like I would have died to have that experience at Columbia. Like if someone asked me in an elevator, "What do you think of the Iliad?" I would just be like, "What?" I'd be like, "Oh my God." That's why like you started with like, "What's your favorite book?" And I was like, "Someone's really asking me about the picture of Dorian Gray." Like I live for it completely. I
Well, I always want to hear about it. So the door is always open if you ever want to, you
That's
know,
amazing.
continue the conversation about books. I will talk about books all day, obviously. um,
No, thank you
but
so much for even like inviting me to be on here and to talk about it. I was like, that's like all I've been thinking about, and it's such a cool experience. Not in a
of
weird way, but I
course.
just mean like because I mean reading and writing is such an isolating thing that this has just brought me so much joy, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity.
Same. I mean, we'll keep on talking about books. Please send me
Absolutely.
all of your thoughts. I would
Yeah.
love to hear them.
I need
And
to
yeah,
see
I mean,
that
I think
reel about show and tell, like show
I
don't
will. I
tell.
will.
Yeah,
It's on my
please.
list. I have this giant list of
Yeah.
real ideas, and then I just,
I might
whenever I have a
stitch
moment, I
it.
film.
I might stitch it just to be like what she said, what she said, what she said. Because like I
Yes,
can't, yeah,
it's so obviously I have many thoughts on the
yeah.
publishing industry, but this was fantastic. We'll
Mm,
do it again.
absolutely.
And for those of you at home, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next time with more. And I'm Lisa, and this is the Pens and Poison podcast.